Okay, so two things inspired me to make this video. One, I met a lady in the grocery store who was standing there devastated because she couldn't find any of these, and it was the only thing she knew how to make. And two, I saw Alton Brown on YouTube a couple of weeks ago, and he had spontaneously decided to make a video with himself and his wife, just making dinner one night in his home. And I thought, you don't need a fancy studio kitchen to make something. If a celebrity chef can do that in their home, well, why can't I? So welcome to the basics. Today, I'm inspired by this. In order to make that, you need water to hydrate your pasta, milk to make the sauce, and butter for a bit of creaminess, and it does some thickening as well. But if I take and add to that just a few ingredients, then we can make ourselves our own Alfredo pasta, or at least an Alfredo style, in your own home. So here we go. Before we start, I have two footnotes for you. One, eagle-eyed viewers may notice that my hands look like this. That's thanks to my daughter, who decided for today, April Fool's Day, that she would take and stick eyes that she drew all over the food in the fridge. When I tried to take the eyes off, this got on my hands, and no matter how much I wash, it's not coming off. Secondly, if you're in the know and you understand some of these terms, you'll actually realize that the sauce we're making today is not an Alfredo sauce. It's a bechamel. If you understand what that is, good on you. If not, it's not important. Don't worry, we're moving on. So, we have hardware, software. First of all, for the hardware, you're going to need two pots, one for your pasta, and this one for your sauce. You'll need a whisk, you'll need a spoon, doesn't matter if it's slotted, you'll need some measuring spoons, and then you're going to need a strainer and a bowl to catch some of that liquid from the pasta. For the wet ingredients, we're going to need, of course, that water that we talked about. We are going to need some butter, milk, salt, parsley, optional, black pepper, garlic, rather than taking and chopping up your own whole garlic, which you can do if you want. You can buy it minced in a jar, some flour, and then I have two extra things. One's software, one's hardware. I'd like to make a case for buying a wedge of Parmigiano-Reggiano, which is an Italian cheese that one celebrity chef calls the king of all cheeses, which I think is an overstatement, but still, even though this is going to cost you about 10 bucks to buy, you can grate it over salads, soups, other pastas, into your mouth. It's good stuff. If you don't want to find that, you can just use grated Parmesan. That'll work fine. And get yourself a kitchen scale if you can. I use mine for all sorts of things. You can see I've taped up the back here. It's in pretty bad shape, but it still works fine, so I keep it. If you don't want to go out and do that, I'll give you measurements to go with that as well, but really that's preferred. All right, on to the cooking. So even not so eagle-eyed viewers will notice that I forgot one thing in the software. Pasta. Today we're going with a penne mezzane rigate. Traditionally, you would go with a fettuccine, but I like to grab whatever I have available. That's kind of the name of the game these days. And this one's nice because it's got holes. It'll sop up a bunch of the sauce for me so that it'll be nice and flavorful. So, get your pan, fill it about 3/4, maybe 2/3 of the way full of water, and then add at least a tablespoon of salt. You want this good and salty, the water. Turn it on to high and wait for it to boil. Oh, um, if you haven't already yet, turn on your fan. And once the water is boiling, dump in your pasta. I'm going with about a pound of pasta here, or 500 grams if you're looking for metric, roughly. Once it's in, your water is going to stop boiling for a moment because you took all that energy out of it into the pasta. But give it a stir. If you don't stir it, it's going to stick to the bottom, guaranteed. And turn your heat down to about medium high. On my stove, that's about a 7 out of 10. Now, how long am I going to let this boil away? Well, you could read the package. This one says 9 minutes. Or, when you think it's getting close, grab a noodle out of it carefully, it's going to be hot, and taste it. See what it tastes like. Does it taste done to you or not? Is it still kind of crunchy? Depends on what you like it to be. Also, every minute or so, give it a stir so that it doesn't stick to the bottom. Okay, we're getting close here. So I'm just going to take a piece out if I can. Set it aside for a second, give it a moment so that it's not blistering hot and burns your mouth all to death. Yep, that's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to carefully take this off, turn off my burner, and then strain through my colander. So why am I keeping all of this liquid? Well, it's good stuff. I'm going to put it into my sauce later. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I would highly recommend keeping it. Otherwise, you can just dump it into the sink. Once I've got that drained, I'm actually going to return my pasta to my pot. And just set that aside so that I can deal with my sauce. For the sauce, we're going to use a base called a roux, which is a French term for a thickener that uses butter and flour. Now here's where the scale comes in. Now if you don't have a scale, as I said earlier, I'll give you measurements as I go. But preferably, I'd love you to use your scale, so I'm going to teach you in case this is your first time. We want to do this, if possible, into a vessel like our pot. If I put my pot right on the scale before I hit the on button, then it will take that into account when I go ahead and start it up. So, firing up my scale, it now says 0 here, and I'm going to turn that into grams for us here in Canada. If I take my pot off, it shows me a negative number because it's taken my pot into account. If I hadn't done that already, I can hit the tare button and it will zero out and pretend that the pot isn't actually there. So once I've got that at 0 with my pot on there, I'm going to go ahead and put 30 grams of butter into my pot. I'm halfway there. Close enough, 28. Now, if you don't have a scale, you're looking for 2 tablespoons of butter. And then we're also going to take and put together our flour, which is 30 grams of flour, an equal amount. If you don't have a scale, again, we're looking for 3 tablespoons of flour. Take your butter and melt it on the stove over medium heat. Once your butter is fully melted, dump in your flour and whisk to combine. It's going to look a little sticky. Give it a second there to fully hydrate. And then start adding your aromatics. So we're going to go with half a teaspoon of parsley, dried parsley. That's optional, of course. And a teaspoon of your minced garlic. At this point, also it's a good idea to add maybe 4 turns out of your pepper grinder, which is probably about 1/8 of a teaspoon, and whisk to combine. Give those aromatics a minute to meld together, and then dump in a cup of milk. Don't use skim. And half a cup of your pasta liquid. Again, whisk to combine. Now it's going to look chunky at this point, but as it comes to a simmer, that will smooth out for you. Whisk occasionally for the next couple of minutes until it starts to bubble and thicken. Now you see how we've got these big, thick, gloopy bubbles going on in there? Now comes the good stuff. 1 cup of grated Parmigiano-Reggiano. Of course, if you don't have that, add about a 3/4 cup of just plain old grated Parmesan. Whisk to combine. And voila! You've got a sauce. Now, if you don't like the consistency of the sauce, you can always thin it out with a little more milk or a little more of your pasta water. Before I go ahead and dump this on my pasta, it's always a good idea to taste your sauce. Now, careful, it's hot. All right, you'll probably need somewhere around about half a teaspoon of salt. This is going to be dependent on your pasta water, your Parmesan cheese, whether you used salted or unsalted butter. But add salt to taste until you get a level that you like. I'm going to go ahead and give that one more taste. There we go. Finally, take your pasta, dump it in the bowl. Add your sauce. And stir to combine. All that is left is to serve and eat. What? Well, yes, you could portion it out for others, but these days, maybe you're eating alone, and that's okay. Enjoy. If you liked this video and you found it helpful, let me know, and maybe I'll do more. Thanks again.